Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Happy holidays, folks. If you are tuning in, you may have just celebrated Christmas or otherwise just enjoying, hopefully, a nice, safe, warm holiday break. And just because the Winged Wheel Podcast is on its own little mini break doesn't mean that we didn't pre-record some content for you. So what we have today is a special bonus episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We decided to lean into our own Gear Nerd series hosted by your very own Brad Crisco, who's on the call with us today. But we joined up with another pro in the gear space, geargeek.com, at geargeekhockey on Twitter. We are joined by Matthew. Matthew, thank you so much for jumping on the show today.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to our discussion here, and I'm a big fan of you guys too, and all the work that you guys do, and the the attention you've gathered from covering the Red Wings, covering hockey, and can I also say just, the work you guys do when you guys have that now annual game at Little Caesars Arena, when you're joined by Mickey and Kenny and the benefits you give to the Jamie Daniels Foundation. I'm a big fan of you guys. You guys do a good job. So it's an honor to be on the show here with you guys. And Brad, you specifically, no offense, Ryan, but all the engagement you give us on Twitter and the fun that we have going back and forth talking about Philip Zadina and the different sticks he's using, the 5 different sticks he's using on a weekly basis. I'm just a big fan of you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, much appreciated. That means a lot. Generally, I have concern for anyone who goes out of their way to thank Brad, but no, I understand it in this scenario. You two are, your brains are wired the same way. So before we get into, the NHL players and all the questions that we gathered from listeners, tell us a little bit about geargeek.com, what you do on that site, and how the kind of magic happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, so Gear Geek is connected with ProStockHockey.com. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. But for anybody that may not, ProStock is sells equipment that's purchased directly from NHL locker rooms, and we've recently just introduced selling kids gear, kids sticks and gloves as well, from the manufacturer partnerships with the manufacturers that we have, but mainly we're known for selling the equipment that comes from NHL locker rooms, and then that started in about 2014, and then in the summer of 2017 was when Gear Geek was officially launched. It is known as the equipment database of the NHL, and I was brought on to assist with Gear Geek shortly after that in about February 2018. And what we do is we try to keep up with the equipment that NHL players are using on as much as we can. It's a challenge because I'm sure, Brad, as you know, these guys are changing equipment on a daily basis, on a nightly basis. So it's tough. It's in a way impossible to gather every single one, but from on a nightly basis. But we do our best to try and make sure that we have everybody as up to date as possible, and we're just trying to get better with it. But that's pretty much the long and the short of it. There are other challenges. I'm sure, Brad, you can attest to this. Obviously the website keeps track of the graphics of the sticks that are being used. And that's not to say we don't know that the majority of players are using sticks that are merely dressed. But having said that, the majority of viewers and hockey watchers are going to identify, the stick based on the graphics that they see. So that's why we've ultimately so far decided to, go with the graphics on the website. But, at the same time, we share the inside information if we know what an actual sticks build is. When we have that info, and we also welcome our followers, and they do a great job of sending us screenshots, sending us pictures of sticks that they see and say, hey, Brady Tkachuk is actually using this, and we like to engage, toss them a retweet, and engage from that side as well. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to say the least.
So through all of that, I have to imagine it's an immense undertaking trying to track. And like you said, seeing behind what the players are almost deceiving you with based on sponsorships, or, sometimes they just paint stuff black. I know that. Do you ever get kind of a friendly nudge or any ins from equipment managers or folks adjacent to them across the league? Or is this still, you have to use your tools and your tools only to kind of understand what's happening with equipment?
Yeah, I think there have been a few instances, with our relationships with Pro Stock Hockey, where some equipment managers across the league have given us some inside scoops. But most of the time it is just us and mainly myself just looking for what's already out there, it's funny how some teams will, and some social media teams will post, photos on Instagram stories, on Instagram feeds, and not realize they're actually breaking very specific and very entertaining news to a particular group of people. But that's pretty much the bulk of it. So, I mean, not too much is said, behind the scenes. It's mainly just me and the folks, the few folks who assist me, being on the lookout, while we're watching games, while we're on social media and trying to find, what's new in terms of players, using new gear, trying different things and that sort of thing.
All right. My last question before I'll start to kind of get into the fan questions. And Brad, obviously you got to jump in here and do most of the talking, but I asked you before, and I'm going to ask again for the listeners. What do you use? What sticker are you using? What kind of gear have you found yourself liking?
Yeah, well, it's always a good question. One of my favorite questions, Ryan. I'm a stick snob. It's funny. When I was younger, I loved having the latest and greatest graphics, the most recent ones, if you will. But, now the older I get, I like trying new, pro stock patterns, whether it's, I just picked up, a Jack Eichel, Supreme 2S Pro the other day. Well, it's actually an MX3 dressed as a Supreme 2S Pro, but, you get the idea. But if I had to answer your question, my favorite one right now is, I've got a couple of Patrice Bergeron Pro Stock sticks that, have been treating me well. His, if I could describe it, the curve that he uses is like a nice blend of a few that I like. Like I said, it's been treating me well, I would definitely pick it as my favorite, but ultimately I do like experimenting with as many pro stock patterns as I can.
Well, since you just said you're a tinkerer, let's connect that to the NHL. So obviously you're the guy who's tracking everything. You know what it's like to tinker with this, that. I track the Red Wings, so I know, like we talked about with Zadina, how he tinkers. What player in the league drives you the craziest with how much they change, they tinker, they try, and then you see them with something different every day?
Oh man. Over the last couple of years of doing this, if I had time to sit down and think about it, I'm sure I could name a bunch, but off the top of my head, he's been pretty good this year, but Malkin is a guy who stands out. He's going back and forth usually. I remember in the 2018 playoffs. Oh no, so it was 2018 and Nicholas Backstrom's a Warrior guy. So the Covert QR Edge and the Alpha QX were the ones he was going back and forth with. And in the 2018 playoffs, I kid you not, it was every other game. It was one or the others. And it got to a point where I was like hounding the Capitals Twitter and hounding the Capitals Instagram And, at stoppages of play while watching the game, I was making sure, I took it, if I was keeping my eyes peeled for Backstrom to come across, to make sure I could get a glimpse of him, to see if maybe he was giving me the night off and using the same stick on back-to-back nights. But he was nuts on, during those playoffs. And like I said, there really are at least a handful more. You could go Duncan Keith when he was still in the league. He was doing it a lot. But those guys are ones, historically who come to mind, right off the bat.
There's been a lot made of Philip Hronek's change in stick this year. Yeah, I believe he used more of a squared off toe for a long time, or squared off blade for a long time. That speaks to my soul personally. Brad's going to laugh because I used to use the old orange and white Nike Apollo with this squared off toe because I was a defenseman and just jam it up against the boards. And you're laughing already, I know that.
Yeah, we could have a 30-minute conversation just roasting everything you used, but I'll give you a pass on this one.
So pretend, Matthew, you're talking to a layman, say me, and or the average hockey fan who might not know what you know. Explain the change that Philip Hronek made in his stick this year, how that would impact an average hockey player's game, and whether or not you think that has any kind of impact at all into his improved play this year.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've experimented with the curve that he's using now. It's most closely related to that P28, which is picking up like crazy around the league. And I guess it depends on what kind of player you are, because I have recommended the P28 to some of my friends, and a few of them have said, no, I can't do it. It's too wild for my shots. And then others have said that it has helped them. And, from my experience, and I know I'm not anywhere near, and I never will be anything near where Philip Hronek plays. So it's a lot different when you compare it to a beer leaguer, to Philip Hronek in the NHL with the Detroit Red Wings. But, the biggest thing I notice is your control with that P28 curve. And you might not think that, Hronek as a defenseman and not him previously not being known as an offensive guy. Sometimes that possession is such a difference in its own. Like, when you have more confidence and you're able to possess the puck, it allows you to, make a cleaner breakout pass. And if you're making cleaner breakout passes, it leads to better scoring chances. And sometimes you're on the other end of albeit a secondary assist, it's still an assist, and you get more points that way. So, I don't, again, like I'm just a beer leaguer, so like you guys, so I mean, I can't speak for, somebody to the magnitude of Philip Hronek, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a breakdown of some of those little things. And he's noticing some of those little things like control on his stick, and just, having a better feel for the puck in tight, whether that's in his own end or whether he's able to keep pucks in, at the point better, and have more confidence when he's patrolling the blue line in the offensive zone. I think it's a buildup of many little things that are working well for him. If I had to provide an educated guess.
So off the air the other day, I guess I'll direct this one to you, Brad. I'm representing folks who don't know a lot about or an advanced amount about hockey gear right now. I'm your emissary with these pros. Brad, off the air, you told me about, I think, 2 or 3 blade patterns or stick patterns, whatever you want to call them, that are most prevalent right now. Walk us through what they're called and the differences between them.
So the 2 most prevalent, and again, Matthew will be able to speak more to what the NHLers are using. I'm going by, obviously I sell the stuff, so sales patterns and in my league, keeping track of what guys are using. But it's a P28 and the P92 because, as Matt said, the bigger curves give you more control, harder shots, more whip. You can get that toe and go release a little easier. So they're starting to catch on in the heel curves and the mid curves like the P88, the PM9 are starting to phase out a little bit. You still got a handful of guys hanging on, but basically with those two curves, to, summarize, it gives you more toe on the stick. You get more of a cradle, you get more of a release. And then, personally for me, I think the biggest reason these two are catching on is, when I was a kid growing up playing hockey in the 90s, we were taught to shoot heel to toe, start the wrist shot on the heel and let it roll. And if you had way too much toe, that thing was just a slingshot that nobody could control. Now everybody's taught the curl and drag release. So you pull in from the toe of your stick and then snap from the, heel to mid part of your blade. So getting these two not new curves, they've been around for a while, but these two curves, they allow you to do that really, really smoothly, really efficiently, and without a ton of effort or focus being, attached to it. So I think it's just more so the evolution of how to shoot, how to stick handle has led to these two curves becoming the most prominent curves by a lot.
Okay. We're going to jump into some Twitter questions, it's Patreon and Twitter questions. This one's from a patron whose name is Patrick Waz Black-Eyed Wink. Says, several years ago, I heard Sonia DiBiase, I hope I'm saying that right, of CCM on another admittedly goalie-focused show discussing the idea of adding different flexes and additional curves to their line of goalie sticks. The flexes have come to pass with all three major players offering two lines of sticks now, but we're still stuck with only two curves that are remotely usable for goalies who'd like to handle the puck. Any word on seeing additional patterns, or am I still stuck hunting down pro stock to find what I like?
Yeah, I'll start on this one because I can take the retail end of this. The short answer is no. You're going to be doing a lot of pro stock hunting. I know Bauer specifically has been at least talking internally about possibly bringing out some new curves. I know a lot of their more recent goalie sticks have more of a rounded toe, which is something they got a lot of feedback on and they've been trying, and the length of the shaft is shorter, which is, I know, a lot of feedback they were getting. So the companies listen and they hear what people are, wanting, what they're talking about. Admittedly, they're very slow to react on it. So I'm not going to say, no, this isn't going to happen, but from a large scale retail standpoint, it hasn't happened yet.
And then along the same, there's a lot of goalie questions here. That's great. Nick Putty says, sticks have been discussed at length between flex, kick points, curves, Ryan's square blade, but is there as much variation in goalie sticks, and are there different variables that are specific to goalie sticks? So what are the characteristics that make up a goalie stick that maybe the less crazy players on the ice wouldn't even know about when shopping?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things. So the shape of the shoulder, which, okay, to explain it to someone who wouldn't know that, the wide part of the paddle going into the narrow part of the shaft, that can tinker in terms of shape because, most goalies will use the trigger grip nowadays where the index finger comes down and they're holding it like with their other three fingers, and adjusting the shape of that shoulder kind of can tinker with the grip. I know Bauer even does the 5-sided shaft with where your palm sits on goalie sticks now. It's pretty wild what they're getting into because, yeah, like I said, flex and kick point is a thing on goalie sticks now, which never used to be a thing. Shaft length, like I mentioned on the last one, they're starting to tinker with. There's getting to be a lot more options. So, but the two big things, like I said, that they've really been tinkering with in the last little while is, kick point / flex, and then the shoulder shape.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Brad, because I too am actually the goalie gear is something I'm still a rookie with and learning for. But I know, speaking from the pro stock side, one goaltender in particular is UC Saros. And I know at Pro Stock Hockey we had quite a few of his patterns in stock for a while, and those were we had requests for them over and over again, and then when we finally got them back, they just picked right off the shelf, and I believe based on some of the messages I've been getting from the Pro Stock side, the goaltenders, if you will, just really enjoy the overall feel of his pattern and the blade itself. But yeah, I think you pretty much touched on it earlier in terms of there being some limitations with from the retail side and all of that. But who's to say what's to come for the future? Hopefully there is going to be more flexibility for goaltenders going forward.
All right, that's a lot about sticks, and I'm sure we're going to get back to it. But there's a question here that I think is very relevant to the Red Wings, who have been collecting broken and bruised hands this season. This one's from CB on Wheels. It says, here's my question. Why do players not gravitate toward newer glove models and put more importance on backhand protection over finger protection? After seeing Bert break a finger and Larkin also maybe do the same, why is this the case?
Okay, simple answer here. Hockey players are idiots. And as a hockey player, I'm allowed to say that. Players are creatures of habit. So when they find something they like, there's a lot of guys who are very reluctant to get off that. Like, you look at the top end players in the NHL, McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, they're all using gear that's, 6, 7, 8 years old. They just, once they adapt to it, they do not want to switch off of it. And it's not for lack of trying from the manufacturers. Cause I know, in CCM, their new Tax glove line, they really did put an emphasis on the back of the hand there. They put some of their Nest Tech material in there, some of their D3O absorption material in there. So they're trying. Players just don't like adapting, and I can't stress enough how little players care about their own safety on the ice. They'll rip padding out of their gloves. They'll wear shin pads that are 2 inches too small. The Bauer 5100 and 4500 is a helmet in the NHL for some reason still, and I cannot explain why, because that thing is a piece of foam from the 90s that has not evolved at all, and guys wear it. So I wish I had a detailed, in-depth answer here other than players are creatures of habit, but that is the answer here.
Yeah. And, Brad, you pretty much touched on it from the protection side of it. And then in terms of from the new models and new releases, I can't for the life of me figure it out. And I guess it goes back to pretty much what you just said. But I remember before the 2017-18 season, when Alexander Ovechkin first signed back on with CCM, he actually started the season with Bauer gloves, and then it along the way, if the JetSpeed FT1 gloves were introduced, and he was among the first to wear those, and then they took off, they did well, and then the Ultratax or the HGTK model from CCM did well. The Covert QRL gloves from Warrior are still around the league quite a bit. And the QRE gloves caught on quite a bit, I'd say. But then there's more that just for whatever reason don't. And I mean, you can go down the list of the new, the JetSpeed FT4 gloves from CCM, the Tax AS4 gloves, the Warrior Covert QRE 10. We only saw a few of those in the NHL. But yeah, it just comes down to what you said, and these guys are the best of the best, and they are creatures of habit, and it really takes it really takes a domino effect, I suppose, to really create a wave across the league. But there's no telling for when that next model is going to be. But shout out CB on Wheels. That was a phenomenal question. I wish we had better answers for you, but that's about as best as we can sum it up right now.
I'm actually going to kind of follow up on that one, because the one thing you touched on there, I've noticed a lot, and I just want to see if you can kick around some speculation as to why, because with certain things, and gloves might be the most specific one where I notice it a lot, where we won't see something, and then everybody has it. And the most recent example I had this year was the Hyperlight gloves. Because I got Hyperlights in the summer myself, and I put the things on. I'm like, these are phenomenal. These are the best gloves I've ever worn. They're going to be insanely popular. And for the first little bit of the season, nobody was wearing them. Everybody was still wearing their old 2X Pros or whatever model they were wearing. And then last I checked in, which wasn't that long ago, there's a ton of guys in the NHL, at least relative to a couple months ago, who are wearing the Hyperlight gloves. So do you think this is just them giving it time, breaking it in practice? Is it word of mouth? Buddy in the locker room tossing it, going, holy shit, you need to try these? What do you think the reason behind that is? Because again, like you've said, the FT1s caught on, the FT4s never did, the Hyperlights caught on, the Ultrasonics were kind of, sort of, whatever, the QRE10s never did, despite being so close to some of the older models.
Honestly, one theory that I might have, and let me be clear, I promise I don't have any inside information here to say that this is the reason, but one thing I did notice in the early going is when the reverse retro equipment was starting to get introduced, it's almost like some of these guys were forced into those Hyperlight gloves. It's almost like Bauer didn't even give them the option to make their old model in the reverse retro colors, and then these guys started wearing the Hyperlight models in their reverse retro colors, and then maybe that was the test they needed, and they were like, oh wow, these are great, and then they tell their equipment guy, tell Bauer to send me these Hyperlights in the real colors. I noticed that with a few guys. And I'm sure you might be able to recall, Brad, seeing, the tweets on Gear Geek. I often said, he's only got these in reverse retro colors right now. They're not in the standard colors. But then shortly after, some of these guys started adding the standard colors, in Hyperlight gloves as well. So, again, I don't know. I can't say for sure if that's the reason, but, there were plenty of examples of, that being the case of the guys somewhat being introduced to the Hyperlight model through the reverse retro, style, and then adding and then ordering, an additional pair in their standard colors. So, again, that would be a best guess of mine in a way. And I guess funny how that kind of, got guys on board to make the full change, if you will.
So one of the most popular topics in the hockey gear world right now is the Bauer Agent. We have a bunch of questions about it. One of them on Patreon from Jake Steggles says, have you tried the Bauer Agent, and is it worth the money for an advanced level player that just plays in beer leagues now? I historically used Vapors and recently switched to a Nexus Geo, and I like it, but I don't love it. And I believe there is another question here from Sean Cook who says, do you think the Agent is too light? Like, it takes time to adjust, yes, but I feel like I need a little more in terms of weight than it has to get a good stick check in.
All right, I guess I have to start this one because I've been using my Agent for about a month now.
There we go.
So what I will say, I like it. I really, really like this stick. For anybody who wants kind of the more in-depth, it's basically a Hyperlight build. It's got the Hyperlight taper, the XE taper, the low kick point, the same blade. It's a Hyperlight. Just with, instead of carbon fiber, it's built from boron fiber. So they use a material that's lighter, for obvious hopeful advantages there. So what I found with it, to go over the quick pros and cons, the release on it is unreal. It really is, because of the weight reduction, feels like a really effortless release. I bought the exact same specs on the Agent as the Hyperlight I was using. I find the Agent actually to be a little stiffer. Not a ton, but I find it to be a touch stiffer. The puck handling's phenomenal. The puck feels phenomenal. The one thing that I actually really had to adjust to, and this is going to sound so simple and stupid, was catching passes. I found that there was a couple times if someone sent me a nuke and I really wasn't like focusing on proper reception, it would kick under the blade because I just didn't have the weight behind it that I did on the Hyperlight. And it's only like a 40-gram difference or something like that. And I didn't think it would be that dramatic of a difference, but I definitely found that happening a bunch, and I've adapted now and it's fine. So in my opinion, the stick is as good as advertised. I mean, it's $40 more than the Hyperlight. So it's not like you're reinventing the wheel, but for that extra little change, I found it worthwhile. In terms of your average beer leaguer, good God, no, don't spend your money on this. Like, it's a good stick. I bought it because I get a discount on it. And it works fine for my senior A league and my beer leagues and all that. And it's great. But yeah, like if I went into Rapid Shot with an Agent versus, like just a Bauer Vapor 3X, I'm maybe adding 5 miles an hour to my shot. Like, it's not super dramatic that a beer league goalie is going to really notice the difference with that puck coming in on him.
At that retail price tag, I would not recommend it. But if you've got extra money to spend, have at it. And let me first say that I myself have not tried the Agent yet. But one thing I will say, and I hope, some of the people who follow Gear Geek who are constantly telling me, that stick isn't actually an Agent. It's not actually a Nexus Sync. This one's for you, because it's no secret that a lot of these sticks and out there are not what they really are, and the same goes with the Agent. Like, I know for sure Trevor Zegras is Agent is just the graphic, and he's still going with his 2N Pro XL build, I believe. I'm about 95% sure Jack Hughes' Agent is also just the repaint. So I'm gonna be devil's advocate, and I'm gonna say go with what you're used to. The most important thing is the feel here. It's being comfortable is what is in my opinion the way to play your best and to feel your best out there. I'm gonna say, but again, I will remind you again, I haven't used it. Maybe I will use it eventually and have a differing opinion, and we can have a follow up segment here. But in the early going, I would say, stick with what it is that you like, and you should be fine in the long run.
Okay, so we have two questions here, both about grip on either end of the stick. So from Ryan Lee, says, have you ever used the butt ends grips for sticks? If so, what are your thoughts on those versus regular tape? And then a question from Twitter, Cider Salad says, what are the positives and negatives of the ResTech blade grip versus regular tape and wax?
So I have to start with the butt ends on one thing. The grip on them is fine. I don't use them. I don't like them just because they're not a good shape and they're a little too spongy for what I like. Those things are a pain in the ass to get on. And once you get them on, they're not coming off. I know they say you're supposed to, but the number of times I've had customers come in with warranty sticks who have wanted to get their butt ends off, it doesn't happen every time. So you got to understand that. But some people have had different success rates on that versus what we've seen. I'm big on the grip tape because I like the top of my stick to be exactly how I want it. I'm very particular about the shape I use, how much grip tape, how spongy for me, how spongy it isn't. But that's all a preference thing. I'm a big screw around guy. Like, try everything, find out what you like. Cause I've used a million different knobs on my sticks before I settled on what one I actually liked. And the one I actually settled on is so basic and simple. It's hilarious. Most guys like to personalize in terms of how they build out their stick tape wise. So grip tape gives you more options to do that. So I always generally recommend that to the customers I see. The ResTech I haven't actually tried on the ice. We carry it in store. Feels like sandpaper. I don't know what the advantages or disadvantages of that would be because I've never experienced it. So
I'm just a tape guy. I mean, I ever since I was a little kid, I've loved just taping my stick, the knob and the blade over and over again. My dad used to yell at me with how much tape I went through. And, it's no different even at my age now. Again, I'm not, knocking these new products. Guys in the NHL are using them. I'm sure that they're great. And, you've just given, the positive reviews of them as well. But, for me, there's something just about it's not so much the performance for me, the beer leaguer. It's more so just the routine and the love of taping my stick over and over again that I refuse to give that up. And that's why I'm just a little bit selfish and not willing to try some of these new products.
We could do a whole nother episode just on taping the stick because I'm an advocate for other people trying stuff and screwing around with stuff. I now know exactly what I like. I do not screw around with it. My routine is the same. I could tell you how many rounds I go around the knob. exactly to the T, where I've got a line of wax that is like a perfectly straight line on the blade of my stick because I tape it in the exact same spot every time within a millimeter's difference. So yeah, I am very with you on that one. Taping my stick is half the fun of game prep, honestly.
Matthew, are you as insane as Brad is? Like a pathological obsession with NHL players' tape jobs on their blades?
I don't know it to say that, like, I don't have an opinion on them. I am intrigued, certainly, but I don't rip on a guy. Like, as ugly as a tape job as David Pastrnak has, I don't, look at him any differently. I still, respect him as the great player that he is. But I definitely am intrigued by them for sure. For sure.
And Brad, you come in a bit more opinionated on those.
Oh, they can be great players, and I can respect them, and I can like them as players. But like Ryan Johansson's tape job is an atrocity to the game of hockey. It makes no sense. I don't know why he does it. Jamie Benn, what are you doing? 3 strips of tape. You're not Bobby Orr. Like, come on, get some functionality in here. Pastrnak, I actually give a pass to because I know the backstory of why he tapes his stick the way he does, and it's actually kind of heartwarming. So I fully am on board with what he does and the fact that he hasn't changed it since he was a kid. But yeah, I have opinions.
Now, hold on. I have a question for you guys then, since you mentioned Ryan Johansson, because he does the white from the heel about like, 3/4 the way up. So if that's a problem to you, like one of the greatest Red Wings, my favorite Red Wing of all time, one of my favorite hockey players of all time, Henrik Zetterberg did that with black though, not white. And I remember in a video from Warrior many years ago, I think it was either around 2010-11 with his Warrior Widow, he had said he just did that because he's lazy. So I hope you don't have a bad opinion or you're not about to trash Henrik Zetterberg over here.
I mean, everybody can improve at certain things. Henrik Zetterberg is a saint, but I can go a step further here. I can actually make this worse. Do you know who else used to, for early in their career, use that stupid, like 3-inch heel tape job? Nick Lidstrom.
Oh,
he smartened up as,
oh man.
He smartened up as his career went on and he started taping the full blade, but there was a while. Lidstrom actually was wild too. Him and Franz Nielsen, if you ever find pictures of them back, for the knob of their stick, they used almost an entire roll of tape. It was insane. I can't for the life of me process what the benefit of that would be, but who am I to question Nick Lidstrom? He obviously had it figured out.
Talking about Red Wings and weird sticks and stuff, I remember Pavel Datsyuk was one of the first players in the league to feature a stick with a hole in it. It had the 3 holes, I believe it was, in the shaft. I don't know that we've seen holes in the shaft come back. We did just recently see a strip, like a hole in the blade, and I don't know how popular that is. Okay, that tech in general, gimmicky, does it have benefits? What's that been like, and how long did that even last for Datsyuk?
So Datsyuk was on the shaft. That was the only stick model that ever really truly did it in the shaft. Matt will be able to give you the stats on this because I think it starts and ends with Jake DeBrusk. I'm not going to say the hole in the blade is gimmicky because, I've tried them. They're fine. They didn't feel any better or worse than a normal blade. I'll tell you this, kids under the age of 14 loved it. Adults, not so much, but there's probably a very good reason why they never caught on at the pro levels.
The Nexus ADV with the hole in the blade, that was right before COVID when that launch started, when that launch happened. And if I remember very clearly, I had a tweet in March of 2020 that I sent out, that the only guys we had seen with the stick in a game, and one was a little bit flexed, but it was a Jake DeBrusk, Braden Shen from St. Louis, and then RA from Spittin' Chicklets. He had a picture with it himself. So yeah, I mean, I'll say that was quite gimmicky, the Nexus ADV, and there's a reason why it didn't, catch on. But, with Datsuk and the Reebok O stick, there were a few different, variations of it in the around like 2008, 2009 and into 2010. There was the green O stick, and then later on the 808 O stick that was called from Reebok. Datsuk did use that for us for a time. Victor Hedman did as well. The idea behind those was that it was to allow, like wind to pass through the shaft, when you're on your downswing for a slap shot. I don't know how much that helped, but, I will, those were way more popular and caught on, more so than the Nexus ADV did. So, I wouldn't group those two in the same. But yeah, I wonder if any of the manufacturers will ever give that a go, down the road, or maybe CCM does a reboot at some point and says, hey, remember this thing from way back in the day. That would be kind of fun and to see if maybe it did catch on, knowing that there were guys like Datsuk and Hedman who did use them.
So what I'm hearing then is Datsuk, being one of the best players in the world at his time, was a little bit more influential. We know the NHL is a copycat league, and sometimes you get things like tape jobs, equipment, whatever. It's an imperfect science. How much is influence from the player? How much is trying to copy what the best players are doing in every single way? How much do you see that affect patterns in equipment and gear usage, tape jobs? Or do you find that players don't necessarily care about that, and you'll have a guy like, Kucherov use Giovanni Smith's skates or something like that?
I'll talk about it from a retail perspective, and then I'll let Matt answer from a pro perspective. There's a pretty heavy influence in what you see, especially in kids. When True was, doing their own thing in sticks, and they were okay, their product, in my opinion, is still catching up to Bauer and CCM, but they're doing a good job. Mitch Marner almost has single-handedly launched that company into like a powerhouse in the stick game because he's using it. He's influential. They put his names on the stick. Like one of the TC2 curve is the Marner, and they'll actually write the word Marner on that stick. And the number of kids who want that stick because it says Marner. Again, I'm in Southern Ontario, but like it's very high. And yeah, you'll see a lot of that trickle down to the retail level.
Yeah, Brad, couldn't agree more on that from the True side, having Mitch Marner in a big market, like Toronto, the biggest market in the NHL, arguably, or by numbers, I don't know for sure, but it's up there. Let's put it that way. It absolutely makes a difference. And I just wonder, I'm sure you guys have noticed, William Nylander has been using Sherwood over the last couple of games here. If he sticks with it and he keeps putting up numbers, who knows, what that is going to mean for Sherwood, because, we have seen it in the past. The influence is there with kids. It seems simple. Like if you're a simple enough on paper, but then you've got to encourage these NHL players to actually use your product. And then if they like it, it should work out in the end. But yeah, if Nylander, keeps it going with Sherwood, it'll be fun to see, what kind of growth, we get, from Sherwood there. But on the other side, from, some pro habits that may have caught on, the one thing that I think of right off the bat is that Artemi Panarin tape job, where he does the tip with white, and then he has a single black layer, right across the forehand. Now I've tweeted about that on Gear Geek in the past, and one of our awesome followers, I believe his name is Villy. I'll give him a quick shout out. He had mentioned that a guy in Finland had actually started that. I forgot the player's name, but he had mentioned Artemi Panarin was influenced by him. And well, now Panarin's in the NHL, and then you see this tape job showing up among others. Emil Bemstrom's a guy who's used it. Moritz Seider has been using it now for quite a while. So, and other guys too, their names have escaped me. But other guys have tried it. So, the NHL players are paying attention to their peers and what they're doing, and certain things like that certainly do catch on amongst them as well.
A general question before we get to the last few fan questions here. This is a conversation I thought that was really, really good from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick the other day, which was how has stick and hockey, I should say gear technology in general, enabled the game to come closer together from top to bottom? So that is to say, from a Red Wings perspective, we've seen from time to time Adam Ernie rip down the sides and absolutely snipe one, like gorgeous form. No goalie in the world would have stopped that shot. He doesn't do it often, but has stick technology, has hockey gear technology made plays like that more viable down all four lines? What kind of impact do you think the advance of gear technology has made on the NHL game?
Ryan, you know me. You've seen me. You've seen how I'm built, yes?
Yeah, oh yeah. 6'2".
You've seen my shot. Yep, and you've seen my shot, right?
Oh, yeah. You have a wicked
that's
shot.
all I need to say. I'll let Matt answer from there.
I
If an idiot like me can have a shot like that, yeah, it's the technology's working.
The first time Brad and I ever stepped on the ice, and we never thought each other were bad hockey players. Like, we knew we had both played growing up. And Brad had really just kind of downplayed his game, and we stepped on the ice. He had not taken 2 strides. No brace, no load, nothing. Just ripped one bar down from the blue line at the net. And I looked at him. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Anyways, Matt, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, Brad's exactly right. I mean, and this isn't a new thing. Like certainly it has only gotten better, and it's only going to continue to get better. But I think back to the late. Just at the turn of the millennium when composite sticks first became a thing, and there were still so many guys who took as long as they did to switch to composite. Whether it's Marcus Naslund, Jason Spezza, Paul Stastny, it's like, what were these guys doing? I mean, swallow your pride on the wood sticks and give this a shot, because you really are missing out. And maybe this makes me a little bit of a hypocrite because I don't try the new tape products, but in terms of the stick technology, it really is unbelievable with how much of a difference it makes. And you can say, some of the goaltenders argue that when people rip on them for their equipment getting bigger or getting more, becoming more dense and deadening rebounds or whatever. Well, the stick technology plays a factor into that. These shots are harder. They make them, they make shots more difficult to stop. So it kind of all works out in the wash. And I mean, everything else, like skates are so much lighter. Shoulder pads are so much lighter. All this stuff makes such a difference. And it really is awesome to be a part of it. And I remember when I've had the same shoulder pads for a number of years now, but when I first got them, they were so much lighter than my old pair. I just remember thinking, how great it is having, so much weight off of you and how much better it is to skate. So, the answer is yes. This stick technology, gear technology does have that trickle down effect across everybody out on the ice. So, it's kind of scary to think, where it can go, because all these companies have gotten so much better at improving on what they've already done. So it's exciting and kind of scary at the same time to see where else they can go.
I lied. I have one more general question that I know comes up before we get the last fan question here. What is, if you had to name one product, one technology type, when you think of the craziest concept car, futuristic car, what is in the works or that might be coming down the pipeline in terms of hockey gear? I think sticks are what come to the forefront for people, but is there any technology that you think could make waves in the future? Could be next year, could be 5 years from now. What's in the works?
I'll give a quick answer on this one, but I'm going to kind of change my answer from the question because it's something that already exists that I don't think your average beer leaguer would ever even think about. And it's one of the things that made the biggest change in terms of my on-ice ability in the last 3-4 years since I really switched over. Steel. The actual steel in your skates with the different types of technologies they've introduced. I know Blade Tech's done a bunch of things. CCM bought out Step Steel. Bauer's doing their own thing. They've tried the Carbon Light, which failed miserably, but they tried. But even just like the black steel, the carbon coating, the different materials they use. Cause I went from, God, what was I using before I got my new skates? It was just some basic like Speed Blade XS stainless cheap bullshit. And then when I got my new skates, it came with Step Black Steel. And the first time I skated, I thought I was going to fall for the first 10 to 15 minutes because the glide was so ridiculous. I was still getting edge and bite when I was making turns, but it didn't feel like I was. And so it took me a while just to be able to trust the steel under me because I couldn't believe how effortless my skating was in that versus the garbage I was using before.
Yeah, that's a good one, Brad. And I too made the switch to the black Step Steel, and you think it's such a minuscule detail until you give it a go. But for my answer, I'm going to stick with the same category of skates. And it was just, introduced, this year with the goaltenders and the Bauer Connect skates not having any laces. They do seem to be catching on amongst goaltenders. Andrei Vasilevsky's using them. Spencer Knight is using them and a number of other guys. Semyon Varlamov, I believe, too, or one of him or Ilya Sorokin on the Islanders.
Kosa's using them as well, I know for a fact.
Yeah, and as the season goes on, we're not even halfway through it yet, so it'll be fun to see how many other goaltenders make that change. And I wonder, I don't know why, but I still think that we're maybe a few years away from seeing that come to player skates, but who knows? Maybe companies and manufacturers have something in the works, and we eventually start seeing that on player skates. I feel like it might be a little bit more challenging, but it makes me wonder, how far away we are from somebody giving that a go from a player side.
I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that, because when you look at how particular players, and I know it's one of the things I'm pretty picky with in terms of laces on a skate and the million variations to that. And, I lace my skate, like I skip an eyelet when I'm lacing my skates because I want that extra flex that I couldn't get if I just laced the skates up stock. And, a ton of guys use cloth laces, ton of guys use wax laces. So if there was some type of skate that was built where you could get that flex while still maintaining, all the skating strides, that could be something that I never actually even thought about till you mentioned it, which could really change the game. And the way the Connect skate's built, like obviously that translation to player skates really doesn't have any effect, but something along those lines where the skate's designed to wrap your foot and still give you the flex could be pretty interesting, actually.
All right. Last set of questions here. This is the most prevalent question we get. Came from a few different people. So Beer League Defenseman says, for those who are beginners or still newer to the sport, what should we look for in gear and sticks to balance the cost versus bang for the buck? I've got a lot of cheaper gear from when I started, and I want to know what to look for as I start to upgrade. Andrew Pillen says, never really played hockey growing up, but I'd like to get into it. I'm 23. I know how to skate, but where might be a good place to look for some starter gear? Do rinks generally have like trail runs or something? I don't want to get a whole set of gear and have it be something I either am not good at or don't enjoy. And then I believe there's a question on Twitter from Andy White who says, what level of equipment do you recommend for your average beer league hockey player in general? What recommendations would you give if specifically asked about skates and sticks? So beginner gear, what do you need? What's the best bang for your buck? Fire away.
What's comfortable and what you can afford. It's such a cop-out answer. If you make $500,000 a year and you want to go out and buy all top-end stuff right out of the gate, hey, it's in your budget, go for it. Is it comfortable? Do you like it? Great. I obviously try things on, because if you don't, you're not going to know what you like. But for the most part, the lower level protective equipment, especially, you can definitely get away with in a beer league, and it'll still be comfortable and it'll still do the job. You know, for sticks, until you actually get out on the ice and play and establish a play style, you're not going to know if you need a low kick, mid kick, high kick. You're not going to know what curve you want, what curve you need. You're going to have to experiment. You're going to have to try. I know a lot of places like my store have a shooting range where you can go try the sticks and figure it out from there. The two things I tell people to never, ever, ever under any circumstance screw around with, and if you're going to spend a little extra coin, this is where you do it: skates and helmet. Because a poorly fitted skate is going to ruin your entire skate before you even get going. You're going to be miserable. Your feet are going to hurt. It's going to suck, or they're going to be way too big and you're going to look like Bambi. Spend time, effort, and money on skates. And concussions are very real. Hockey is a very fast sport. Ice is very hard. Do not cheap out on your helmet. And when it comes to helmet, much like skates, fit is everything. Don't just buy the highest end helmet because it's the highest end helmet. It might fit you like garbage. And if it fits you like garbage, it's doing nothing to protect you. So those are the two things above all else. Make sure you get a helmet and skates that fit properly. Everything else is preference.
You know, if it's gloves, if it's shoulder pads, the protective gear, just like you said, make sure it fits. As long as it fits, it's not going to be holding you back. It's going to be giving you that same protection. With sticks, you know, like you said, it's tough because you can't actually get a test run out of them until you buy it and then get on the ice by yourself. But if you're just starting out, you know, don't go and spend $200 on a stick. What you might want to look for is they're known as the team sticks. They're a little bit lower than the top of the line model. Those come in a little bit cheaper, but the technology is still along the line, so you're not like sacrificing a whole lot. And then when you find a stick that you like, the next time around you go ahead and maybe spend a little bit more if you want to treat yourself. So team sticks, be on the lookout for to save a little bit more money, and if you're just starting out. And, you know, you hit the nail on the head with the skates. And the only other thing I will say is that when you do find a particular model of skates, let's use me for example, because I found a number of years ago that the Bauer Vapors fit me the best. I had a pair of Vapor APX2 skates. And then I don't know why, but a number of years later, one of the rounds of tack skates, I believe it was the CCM Super Tack skates that came out around 2016. I, for whatever reason, decided I wanted to give those a go, and I bought them and I used them, and I didn't like them. And not long after that, I flipped them and ate the cost and bought the most recent pair of Bauer Vapor skates. So my feet are way more narrow, and Bauer tends to make a little bit more narrow skates. So if you've got narrow feet like me, you might want to lean toward, Bauer skates. They have been saying CCM had the jet speed line is being, geared toward narrower feet as well. But I'll let you, whoever you are, go to the store and try them on yourself. And when you do find a fit, and after they bake them for you, if they're nice and snug, stick with that brand, that model the whole way through. And the good thing is skates, if you take Brad's advice, which you should, in spending a little bit more money on skates, skates are, like the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. You spend a little bit more money, they're going to last you a lot longer as well. But in the future, if it does get to a point where you do have to replace them, same brand, same model, and you should be good.
All right, folks, this has been Gear Geek joining us on this special bonus episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. Matthew, thank you so much. Give a little shout out to the work you do, plug your socials, the website, and everything.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. As I said, I'm a big fan of you guys and all the work that you guys do. I look forward to following you guys along, for the rest of time, should I say. So you guys keep doing what you're doing. We'll certainly be interacting on social media, but for those of you listeners, if you'd like to get in on the fun and talk equipment with us, you can follow us on Twitter at Gear Geek Hockey, and Instagram as well, Gear Geek Hockey, and like us on Facebook as well if you would be so inclined. But thank you both, Ryan and Brad, for having me on. It was certainly a blast.
Thanks, man. Much appreciated. It means a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.